Hello and welcome to my analysis of the film techniques used in Fantastic Mr. Fox. The film techniques used in Fantastic Mr. Fox shows how the director used more than just dialogue to explain key plot points and how they connect to parts in the story which weren't verbally mentioned. The way the director introduces the main antagonists of the story differs between Boggis, Bunce and Bean. The way they are introduced really affects how you see them as characters, their effect on the story, and how villainous they rank when compared to each other. First, Boggis is introduced at 19 minutes and 45 seconds. We see him run up to the part of the electric fence where Mr. Fox and Kylie have just climbed to escape. We see him holding a gun, showing that he's not afraid to kill anyone or anything if needed. But the danger he poses created by the director is then overshadowed after we see him eat one of the sleeping powdered injected blueberries Mr. Fox made for the beagles, causing him to pass out, turning it into a more comedic scene. Second is Bunce, who is introduced at 20 minutes and 52 seconds. The scene shows Mr. Fox and Kylie stealing from Bunce while clearly being on surveillance, but due to Bunce being distracted, they get away with it. This makes us see Bunce as a character prone to leaving his guard down too much. This also makes us see him as the weaker antagonist, which follows the social norm, as shorter people are seen as more weak. Finally, Bean is introduced at 28 minutes and 11 seconds, and right from the start you can tell that he's the main antagonist and the leader of all the other antagonists. In this scene, he is mainly backlit, so the front of his figure is covered in darkness. We usually like to relate darkness with the unknown, and we usually are afraid of what is unknown. And that's what the director is playing at. The darkness, the unfamiliarity, to show us that Bean isn't a comedic character like the other antagonists, and we should fear him. I chose this scene as well because at the beginning of the movie, the only goal Mr. Fox had was said to be,
I don't want to live in a hole anymore. It makes me feel poor.
And then, at the end of the movie, Mr. Fox goes back to living in a hole in the ground. This proves the point Miss Fox made at the beginning of the movie.
You know, foxes live in holes for a reason.
The whole issue of the farmers hunting all the animals and destroying their homes started with Mr. Fox not wanting to be a wild animal and wanting to live above ground. He grows as a character throughout the story, learning that the wild side and the human side of him can live in unison. This is further proven by when Mr. Fox sees the wolf at the end. Mr. Fox is on a bike wearing clothes, which is depicting the human side, and the wolf is in the wild on all four legs, showing the wild side. The fist being raised shows they have respect for each other, and the two sides can live together in peace. The leitmotif theme used for Boggis, Bunce and Bean goes like this.
Bunce and Bean, confess what should believe. Be sure the crooks are different in looks, another lives different in me.
The soundtrack isn't overarchingly a very villainous theme. Many soundtracks in today's culture for villain/antagonists have both lower/quieter tones, like bass and baritone, while also having opera-like/classical tones as well. The Boggis, Bunce and Bean theme follows this trend as well by having lower/quieter tones. And opera-like/classical tones as well. Lower/quieter tones are supposed to make the villain feel deeper and more darker. This, in addition to lighting, is what is needed for an evil character. Opera-like/classical tones are used to show the intellect of the antagonist. The composition of classical music is usually more planned and insightful, much like the plans of the villain. The music used for Mr. Fox and the animals in general goes like this. Compared to the Boggis, Bunce and Bean theme, it is a much brighter and happier soundtrack. It is also a leitmotif because it usually plays when there is a meaningful moment between the animals. It is also more quick-paced compared to the Boggis, Bunce and Bean theme because of Mr. Fox's quick-witted nature. Usually in films, happy characters are more likable, and this soundtrack adds to that feeling. The more upbeat tones makes you feel like you want to see the protagonist succeed. In conclusion, the film techniques like the music and the visuals added to the story in ways dialogue never could, And that I feel like that's what made this movie much better. Thank you for your time.